Oh, yes. This is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And it's on. I hit a button and it's on like Donkey Kong. We're ready to get started. This is going to be a fun one. The guest, he is a serial entrepreneur, a business leader. He is a relationship innovator. Now, a few other people have referred to him as several other things, including a tech geek, a fitness freak, a podcast junkie, a baseball monkey, and a six-string shredder, which all we will have to ask about. CEO and founder of Alyce, Greg Segall. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
So, man, you're a busy guy. And I was telling you before we hit record, I got lost in your site. And we're going to talk about that. Alyce is fantastic. Lost in there in a good way. I was fascinated. But let me do what we do here. This is our marketing leadership series. We want to talk about gifts. We want to talk about personalization on this show. So I'm going to pass you this thing. It's kind of heavy for me, but I know you got it. Mm-hmm. Okay, here you go. Thor's hammer. You got it? Oh, one-handed. Look at that. Just one-handed.
One-handed, yes.
One-handed bat. You play tennis?
Come on. Fitness freak. Now
Fitness
baseball
freak.
was my
You're
game.
like, just another workout. Thor's hammer. Light as a feather. Light as plastic, even though it's a real one. It's the real one. Okay, so take Thor's hammer. Real. Smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
So the biggest myth that I think is going on in marketing right now is that automation and personalization, I actually think it's doing more harm than good. I think it's actually destroying business relationships right now, and it's even more exacerbated during COVID. So personalization has a misconstrued perception. The promise has never come true. Automation has been something that has, added more and more noise to the world. It was fine back in 2006 and 2007, when market automation was really taking off. But at this point right now, we have to have a fundamental different approach to how we're actually building relationships in business. Marketing and sales has to have a fundamental difference in how it's actually going forward.
You kind of came out guns blazing here. So personalization is what's pretty much every marketer is trying to do more of. And you're saying it's more harmful than good. What's the harm? What's happening that we're not paying attention to?
Well, think about this. If you are using personalization, and the way I define it is that personalization is about how you take data and drive somebody through a buying process, right? So if you think about it, the B2C companies in the world are very much built around data. You have Amazon that knows everything about you, what you're going to buy next. You have Netflix that knows exactly what movie preferences you have and what you're actually going to watch next, right? Because they have billions and billions of data points that are around there. And the issue with marketing and sales right now, both in the cadence world and the sequence world and the, automated, workflows and all those things that are happening right now, all of those are just adding more noise because there's not enough data to actually drive you through. And what the misconception there is that personalization is actually you being personal. But it's so easy for you to be able to read through what personalization is. It's like, hi, Casey, or hi, name, right? You're from this company with blah, 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 X, Y, and Z, things that are there. And that's actually doing more harm than good because you can very easily sniff out whether you're part of a cadence or a sequence right now versus somebody taking the time and effort, and the investment in the time and effort to be able to actually show that you're really interested in really trying to make a personal connection with somebody there too.
Totally, man. I mentioned the other day that I got a sales call from a company that was spamming me and they were annoying me. And I was trying to figure out what I could do on principle to let them know they're doing the wrong email. Cause I'm like email marketing automation guy. I was like, what can I do to teach them something? And I got a cold call from an SDR rep who was like, hey, I was listening to some of your webinars and whether it was recording or not, I was like, oh, and had several minutes of talking about some of the things I had done. Even it was, and maybe that's just a drop in the bucket to what we're talking about, but it was way more than what we're talking about here, which is oh, I know your first name. Hi, Casey. I'm calling Cheshire Impact. And I would everyone knows that, That's, you're right. It's not personal. We think it's personal because it's more than a blank email, but it's, I mean, junk mail we wouldn't call that personal.
Nope.
Yeah.
I think to your point there, if a rep is contacting me and I get solicited 50 to 100 times a day from all different folks,
Really?
it's very easy. Yeah, it's very easy to, you should see my promotions tab now. I basically just either mark it spam or just drag it to
If
promotions
you
if
want to
it's just
put your
something
email
that's
out
not
on
there.
this show, we can just get you
Oh, you can just add
100,000.
that. Yeah, it'll be, yeah, we'll just keep debunking the myth. I'm going to get
Right. You
Thor's
think it's a
hammer and
lot
start attacking
now.
people. Yeah, yeah.
But okay, so you're getting a bunch of these things.
Yeah, so you just get a ton of them, and it's really interesting how it's actually really interesting as a side note who puts me on a list to target me and why I'm on that list,
Right.
which is a totally separate thing we can riff off of, separately. But just staying on the personalization side, the difference between somebody, being relevant to you, and that's what we call the 9 to 5, right? That's anything that's like firmographic, demographic, how your product might be able to help support me, et cetera, et cetera. Those are things that help to show that you're actually trying to add value throughout the entire cycle of the relationship. But the piece that's missing right now is how do you relate to people? Because when you're trying to actually build this one-to-one connection in a world of super abundance of noise, how do you actually get to the one-to-oneness? And that's what we call the 5 to 9, or I try and call the 5 to 9 right now, which is you need to figure out, like you just said, fitness freak, baseball monkey,
Yeah.
podcast junkie, like there's like, that's me, that's you. We've talked about this, previously in terms of, some of the background in, New Hampshire and
Right.
stuff from before this relationship. That is what builds emotional resonance. That's what builds rapport and trust. And the relevant side is super important for you to be able to think about in terms of how do you drive that through. But it is really important to understand people are people. There's been this, you go back even in the last 10 years, that was the whole underpinning that it's human or people to people. Now is the time where it has to come to fruition,
Yeah.
because especially take COVID, it is insane about how much digital noise there is out there, right now, and how much that people are trying to actually, break through the noise. But they're doing it in a way that is so spammy and still about the numbers and not about the quality. They're scaling quantity, they're not scaling quality. And if you look at really good examples of that, like Kyle Coleman at Clary, and his BDR group, like I think they're one of the like really good teams that are they're driving towards quality over quantity.
Wait,
And
who's
there's a
that?
lot of
Who is it?
Kyle Coleman, who's I think he's head of revenue, or I forget what his exact title is over there, but I was on a podcast with him recently,
Cool.
and we were just going off on like, how do you show that you're taking the time and effort to do this? Because people have a very easy subconscious to understand that you're either investing a lot of time in them or you're not. And that is super important for, for somebody to be able to see. And if you don't see that with an instantaneousness, I mean, it starts with the subject line, right? If you're
Yeah.
automating the subject line, even in cases like that's actually detracting from what you're doing.
Got it. Okay, so let's circle back to the 9 to 5 is
Mhm.
the data, and sometimes we even complain about not even having that data correct or
Yep.
it's wrong,
Yep.
and it's
Yep.
almost like table stakes now. If you can't get someone's name right, like okay,
Hmm.
just check out. Like this is not for
Yep.
you. But okay, but that's not enough. Even if you get that right, I mean, there's all these apps and all these partners, all these people talking about get essentially your 9 to 5 data correct. What
Hmm.
percent is that helpful? I mean, versus the 5 to 9, like do you need both 50-50, or like is one way more important? Is like the 5 to 9 just like totally it?
No, you have to think, if you take the 9 to 5 and the 5 to 9,
Yeah.
they're both equally important, because you have to be thinking about this. We call this personal experience in terms of like the category that we're trying to coin right now, which is the fundamental is how do you take all these one-to-many, touches, right? I hate the word touches. I think it's like super creepy in marketing. It's the same thing as like impressions. Impressions and touches are very similar because it's like a one-dimensional thing. It's like, I'm just impressed, giving you an impression, or I'm just touching you, on something that's there. It's not bi-directional, right? So the step away from touches and impressions, which is what everybody thinks about, is interaction. You're trying to create an interaction with somebody. And then the next step after that is how do you go from an interaction to a moment? Like if you are in person with somebody and you're sharing in something, that becomes a moment. That is when you have this like relatable aspect that's happening with you. You can get to an interaction by being the 9 to 5, by being really relevant and understanding how can my product and how can what I'm doing, be relevant to the goals that you might have, especially in B2B. But
Right.
there's a difference between that versus showing that you're actually a human being, right? And that
Yeah.
that 5 to 9 is not just about like, oh, here's my interests and my hobbies. It's like down to how do I want to be sold? Who am I as a person? And all those things that play into it. and what we're talking about, very much internally with our own sales team, and as we're starting to talk with a lot of our customers that are using Alyce and just adopting this approach, is you can train and do discovery as much on the 9 to 5 as you can on the 5 to 9.
Huh.
Right? You can start asking all these questions about who they are. Like in the age right now where, we are seeing each other's backgrounds at home, you
Sure.
can learn more about a person, than anything else in history. You can see all the crazy, children's books, which are probably more my books. You can see like the, crazy skulls and things that we have here, and you can ask questions about that.
Right.
It changes the dynamic in terms of the conversation that you're having with somebody, and the ability to actually create a human, bonds, personal bonds, with folks
Right.
as well. So personalization is not being personal. There's a drastic difference. And you're going to notice that the whole world is going to have to move to personal experiences where it's a one-to-oneness, and you have to treat each individual inside a company differently because they want to be sold differently. They have different goals, differently. And I think, the whole ABM world and ABX and all the stuff that's sort of the hot to trot stuff that's going on right now
Yeah.
is still on the company to company or company to brand level. It's not on the one-to-one personal level, right? So there's a difference between
Interesting.
customer
Yeah.
experience and account-based marketing versus a personal experience, which is literally you've got potentially 2 to 50 people inside of the vendor and the customer that have to work together and have to be building bonds and trust and relationships with each other. And that is the movement that you're going to be seeing, especially over the next couple of years, as to how it's going to move from quantity to quality. And I'm happy to, we've got a lot of things we do internally that we're moving towards that, ourselves, and testing that out, because it's hard, especially in terms of, I know your audience and, having a lot of friends in the marketing ops space, there where, it's like, well, what are you doing? You're telling me that my job is gone. And that's not true. It's just, how do you change and take a entire cadence and entire workflow and look at them and say, where would it be better for me to instead send a generic, message, and how can I take that generic message and sort of build a maturity model towards a personal experience
Hmm.
and make it as one-to-one as possible, right? And can you make that like a reminder or a task for a sales rep to follow up on, and do the work to show that they're investing the time, rather than just being like, well, here's my cadence, I run this, I'm involved in this in marketing, and there's not that marketing and sales alignment, which is another big problem in the world that we're in right now too.
Okay. Yeah, this is a lot, but I feel like it's like the first time I watched The Matrix, and you're like, whoa, what? He just learned kung fu. Like, how did that happen? This is a cool
Yeah,
movie. Maybe
yeah,
we're in the Matrix, right? Talking about it while being on a podcast. Like, that's so meta. But I have 2 questions related to this.
please, yeah.
And I want to make sure I ask them both so I don't forget them. The first one is, how, how do you train and how do you discover the 5 to 9? And then the second will be, how, to your point, how do you actually do this at scale? How do you build it into your process?
Yep. So for the first question, how do you train against this? The same way that a sales team is going to go through and build a discovery questionnaire, like you have
Right.
your attributes in terms of like who your ideal customers are, you understand who those folks are. That's a same thing you can do in terms of discovering an individual person. So like, there's plenty of information out there right now that you can find on most people in terms of what it is that it's about them. But you also don't even need to know anything. It's just learn how to stop asking, where are you located? How's the weather? Like
Mm,
move past how's the weather and start talking about something that's more important, being like, I just got back from blah, 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 where have you gone recently, or whatever it might be, in terms of like, hey, I haven't traveled, or, my kids are in school, if you know that they might have kids or something. There's ways that you can tease out and ask questions and talk. And if you're vulnerable in the beginnings of those stages, it allows you to learn more about that information that's there, right? So
gotcha.
that's like on the one-to-one level, that you're actually targeting, these
What
individual
would be a
folks,
good
especially
COVID
when sales are
question?
there.
Sorry, a good COVID question, because we're not traveling really right now, and you're like,
Yeah,
hey,
you
are
just
your
say
kids going back to
like
school?
you just ask something like, hey, is there any what's a hobby you might have picked up since COVID started,
Okay.
or something like that, right?
Yeah.
There's like things you can do, or questions you can ask around, like, okay, you've been stuck at home, have you done any house projects, what hobbies have you picked up, if they have kids or dogs, like what are you doing in terms of going out or whatever. There's all those things are valid questions that you can actually ask, and how you're training yourself to start being inquisitive, as much in terms of, let me get to the pain points, of who these folks are, using any of the sales methods, they're there. It's the same
Right.
thing in terms of personal, experience methods. What are you doing to actually help to connect, and bond with a person on a one-to-one level? if you have that conversation, it fundamentally changes it because you're actually opening up vulnerability on that side for those specific folks.
Right.
And from a marketing ops perspective and from a marketing automation perspective, which I know is a big part of the, big part of the audience here, it's how do you link up with that? How do you use that
Yeah.
information to then be able to silo and segment that, which is part of your second question. Well,
Yeah.
how do you scale this?
Right.
So, again, I'm trying to be more not plugging our own product here, but the way we do it at Alyce is we use our own product because what we're able to do is have gifting as a big portion and gifting and swag as a big portion of the entire customer lifecycle, prospect through, customer. And the beauty of Alyce is that, you send something to somebody and it's not about me, it's about you. And as you said in the beginning of this, you got lost in like, a
I
couple
did.
thousand different options that are there. Those options, tell me something about yourself when you
Yes.
pick one of those options.
Can you
Right?
see my
It's
history too? Because I looked at like 30 things. Can you see that I looked at 30 things?
I don't no, we don't see those things. I
Does
mean, I think that
Alice,
would be a
can
little
she
bit.
see it?
Yeah, we have that data in the background, because we
Okay.
know what things what you're looking at. But that's only to use that talk about personalization. That's how we actually personalize the marketplace, right? There's a lot of things behind the scenes that help you do
Right.
that, which is like going to e-commerce world. We can geek out on that another time.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can see at the end of the day, like once you pick something, right? Like I sent you a digital portrait, right? Because
Right.
we were talking about your kids,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I knew about that because we went into it. We're saying I have a 4-year-old, you have an 8 to 10 year old, right? And so like that's the beauty of it. So if you chose BarkBox, because you're saying, I don't know if you have a dog or not, but like now I'd ask you about your dog, and now I can do this at scale, and I'm using marketing automation to help really build this program out, and then give this information to sales reps to now actually be able to create a personal bond with you.
Gotcha.
You
So
know what I'm saying?
I didn't actually select anything yet. So you're saying
Not
after
yet.
I select something, there's like a question about it?
No, because I just know what product you selected.
Oh, you know what
So
product?
if you pick like Birchbox, or you pick Barkbox, or you pick a portrait, or you pick whatever's on the thing, even a Nike gift card, like you just
Yeah.
told me something about yourself on the 5 to 9.
Yeah.
So now I can take that and I can actually just use that as a conduit and high confidence to be able to have a conversation with you.
Gotcha. So that information's
It
like
changes it.
in CRM or it's in marketing automation and we can trigger some stuff off of that.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And so now you
Gotcha.
have that information, and now sales can use that, marketing automation can use that, and now you have the ability to start driving it. So that's an Alyce way of doing it. A way to scale it outside of that is you just have to have marketing and sales alignment around take the entire journey that you're actually mapping out for what
Okay.
the experience is going to be for a prospect through a customer, and again just pick out those moments that you want to say, you know what, it would be much better if instead of it being a blanket email that's about the product updates we have, it's actually an email coming from our product manager who launched that product, and there's a video attached to it, right? So being on the 5 to 9 is not just, like I said, is not just about interests and hobbies. It's about who you are as a person and how you make that personal bond one-to-one. So I'll give you a couple of good examples.
Yeah.
One is whenever we send out emails, we never send an email from Alyce. It's always from an individual person.
Okay.
Always. So if you think about the maturity model of moving to one-to-one, you just say, okay, instead of us everything being branded, X, Y, and Z company, you fundamentally change them to be from that individual person. And you try and put a face to the name, that's there. It just humanizes it, right? It
Right.
makes it personal because now I'm seeing Casey's face, creating a video to me, and that's it. You could do the same thing in terms of, like your, product updates inside your app. Instead of it just being like a little like, oh, here's all the updates we've had and here's our release notes, why not have a video from the product manager that's saying, hey, we're
Yeah.
excited that you're checking this out, or even your CSM,
Right.
and saying, hey, by the way, here's a video, I wanted to tell you about these new cool things, I thought it'd be really great for blank, and I can blast that out to the 100 or few hundred users that you have on the place. And again, if you're high volume company, high volume product, like a HubSpot or something that has thousands and thousands and thousands of customers, you can't do it as easily, but you can scale the personal aspects of that, as much as possible around it.
Right.
So that's the key.
And drop in the person that owns the relationship even so that they can see their face. But the humanized side of it makes sense. Stop trying
Yeah.
to be so clinical and like a clean hospital hallway. Just
Yep.
speaking of which, my background needs a little decor. I have an orange wall and that's it.
I know. I
And
was
a
gonna say,
ceiling.
yeah.
You have so much
Yep.
more interesting things behind you. Maybe this is
Yep.
my secret so that salespeople don't know what to pull up. They don't know
Yeah.
5 to
Yep.
9.
Or you're just going to get a ton of artwork now. That's the other thing that you might
Right.
get,
They're like, you need
right?
some artwork. Actually, I found one on your site that was cool about, it was mountains,
Nice.
and
Yeah, yeah,
so yeah.
yep.
And then I spent I don't want to say an hour, but I was walking this morning with some coffee, and I was like scrolling through and being like, show me 12 more, show me 12 more, show me 12
Hmm.
more. It really
Yep.
interesting seeing just the different kinds and right. So this is like not a litmus test. This is the way you're allowing people, instead of filling out a form and asking them maybe a creepy personal question on more of a business form. It's like a 9 to 5 form. You don't want to necessarily ask them too many questions. So you're just allowing them to self-select, and that tells you a lot about them.
Yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
And the other aspect of this, and actually I want to hear some of your opinions on this too,
Yeah,
is when you are investing into somebody, there's different ways of communicating. The communication channels that we have right now are email, LinkedIn, phone calls, obviously gifting and direct mail, and swag, and some of the other things that are out there. And events are obviously off the table right now, although there's obviously virtual events and things we can riff off
sure.
of as well. When you are My wholehearted belief, and I think this is the other big move that's going to happen, is that there's so much about marketers and sales folks that are just about trying to get attention. They're just like, just get me the attention. And what the big movement on top of what we've been talking about is going to be is going from, how do I just get attention to how do I drive action? Right. And the issue right now is that if you're just thinking about it, well, I'm just going to come up with some kitschy thing that's going to help, get the attention of these people. Fine. You might get their attention, but you haven't actually like moved and solved two things, which is moving the personal relationship along as well.
Right.
And the fundamental concept around that is, just as the email that somebody's sending me or LinkedIn message that somebody's sending me needs to show me that they spent time, so that I'm not just immediately in the first line already disengaging from it and
Right.
just deleting. You have to show me that you've invested time and effort into that investment dollars as well. Don't send me your water bottle. I'm not going to use your water bottle. I have my own water bottle that I use all the time that I really like, right?
Right.
And that's the whole other fundamental side of it, is when you're investing into somebody, we have to be looking at it as like, it's not just another channel that you're just trying to turn into a spam, channel, because that is going to become less and less effective as it goes. You have to actually use those investment dollars, to build that bond and learn who that person is, and get to the 5 to 9 and get to the 9 to 5, and allow yourself to build rapport and trust, through that process there too. And that's the other thing you're going to definitely see as the other big movement that's going to happen from the one to many to, one to one. It's going from persona to person. Like, we're going to move more and more from persona to person as the time goes on here. And the companies that adopt that sooner are the ones that are going to be the ones that win, because that's how you're adjusting conversion rates by many percentage points, instead of just a half a percentage point, or fraction of a percentage point, for things that are there.
Well, it's true. There's so much noise out there. Um, and just like we were saying, like you got to have decent data on the 9 to 5, or you're not going to be able to play ball. Just the
Yep.
generic stuff just gets washed out. So targeting a particular group, or maybe a particular buying group and the way they like to buy. Maybe it was like the JV version of getting toward the 9 to 5. How do they like to buy? Show me a comparison chart and don't call me, or like some of the personality of them or how they experience it. It's like trying to hint at that. But have you heard of Adele Ravella?
No. What is
He
that?
wrote the book Buyer Personas. I feel like I want to have you both on like a
Yeah.
panel discussion and be like, all right, go ahead, talk. I'm just gonna step back here for a second.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
I totally see it, right? Because persona, it's helpful, but I think it's because there's so much super bad marketing that like someone who does just like okay marketing, or we just get a little bit more tailored, people are like, okay, at least it's somewhat relevant. But to your point, it's noisier and noisier. This technology's been out there for a long time. You can't just spam your way through this. You can't just cold call your way through this. You got to have some kind of thing that makes you stand out. Otherwise, why are we playing? And these kind of things I can see how you need a tool, because otherwise, I mean, unless you're training your sales team, I mean,
Mhm.
is there any other way for marketing to get some of that 5 to 9, with, other than like a tool like yours?
Currently, no. Right. I mean, I think
Okay, so you're
there's
it.
well, I mean, this is something that we're trying to like really, really pioneer and really drive right now,
Right.
which is like, how do you get to that level of understanding who a person is and really drive that forward?
Right.
So there are ways you can do this, and I also want to make sure that it's not coming across an Adela Ravella, I think it was, we said her name was,
Yeah. Adele. Yeah.
Adele. So like, the thing that you have to understand is that personas have a place, because you have to understand, how do you develop messaging around personas. What I'm saying is, there's going to be more and more a movement. The companies that think about, okay, this is a persona based point,
Yep.
that in the interaction, which right now is a touch or an impression or whatever you want to call it at
Right.
that stage. How do you go from that touch and impression to a moment, and how do you pick the highest impact points of the cycle to be able to do that? Typically, the places you want to do that are where you're having the biggest issues in terms of your funnel, right? So like, different
Right.
folks will have issues higher in the funnel. Well, you need to really figure out, how do you drive that better, because you might not be able to get as many meetings and many things as you want. Some people might have middle of the funnel, where you're in that stage and you're saying, well, oh my God, we keep getting stuck at this place. Well, you know what, maybe if you actually have more vulnerability and are able to actually build a deeper personal connection, you can understand, why are you getting, sort of shut down in that center stage of the pipeline there. And again, think about it, middle of the funnel, down bottom of the funnel, like, you're now into the buying committee in many of these cases, and you're trying to figure out, how do I get, my champions throughout the organization? How do I build multiple champions throughout the
Right.
organization? How do I go through up the chain to build more champions, inside these organizations? Because that's how you get, more advocacy throughout the organization. So all you have to do is, you just have to start thinking, how do I go from persona to person in these individual areas? How do I build more sales and marketing alignment through those points? And now you're starting to actually make some progress there, because you can use this method and this approach in those high value points where you're actually having the hardest challenges inside of the funnel, itself.
Yeah. That helps, right? Because in my head, I was kind of getting overwhelmed because I'm like, uh-oh, I have to get personal on all these stages, all these steps. And we're not saying
Yeah.
throw out
Yeah.
everything. We're just saying,
Nope.
and to your point, look at the whole journey and where the like point click, like where are the points, the gaps. And if, by the way, that's like the number one tip, you got to map out your whole journey. If you haven't, you need to.
Right.
But then when you do that, you identify gaps. Oh, wow, no one converts from this date. We lose half our people in this particular part, or no one's calling us back, whatever that case may be.
Hmm.
Maybe that's a time to drop in a superpower where you get
Yep.
super personal.
Yep.
You go 5 to 9 on them.
Yep.
Whereas the persona might be great for other parts, but then where do you really need to encourage them? I mean, you're not sending a gift every step. You're right.
No. No.
You're
No. No.
picking different moments to make personal calls. That's cool.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah. The more personal you can get there. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there,
Oh,
but
no,
the
no, it's
more
good.
personal you can get in those points, uh, you're building that bond. You're using, in our case, you're using, an investment into that person as a way to actually drive the action, and also drive the bond, with
Yeah.
that person. And it's not just like, oh, here's like tit for tat type of thing, go, 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 and you're just throwing the stuff out there. And again, I want to make sure that it comes across here. It's like, you do not throw everything out. The goal is, this is a
Mm,
transitionary period where we are going, and it's being exacerbated by COVID, because that everything, all the channels have been condensed down. How do you
they have. Yeah.
take those channels, and how do you really, leverage this in terms of this? Like, I hate even direct mail. Like, I hate being bucketed into that, because I believe direct mail is still very much in the touch impression world, where it's like, very much, I'm just going to throw something out there, and it's going to like give it to you. And maybe like, it's effective, right? And it's also effective because it's a channel that's being underutilized right now, which is where
Right.
we're growing so fast. But our approach to it is very different again. And I think that's the thing that marketers have to understand here, is like, you also don't need to invest dollars at those moments. You can actually just infuse people to
Hmm.
the high value points, and start to actually figure out, how do I merge that through, and how do I actually, mix and match into those points. You can start very slowly. You just pick points in journey, and that's where you can start building, really tight sales and marketing alignment around that too.
Right. Right. The progression made it so clear for me when you described impression. Okay, like means nothing really. That's why I mean, no one I think in marketing really, especially in the B2B world, is like, ooh, reporting to the executive board. Well, we've had 30,000 impressions this month, and if they are,
Hmm.
please, people stop. But
Yeah.
30,000 impressions. But no, it's the touch. But then you're like, okay, well, what is a touch really? You could bother someone, and that counts as a touch. You could help them out, and it's too vague. And to your point, it's creepy,
Yep.
right? I touched 30 people today, and you're not in jail. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But then it goes to interaction, which makes sense. and then moment, like going from interaction to a moment. Interaction is great, sales interaction, cool. But how do we make that something even more special? Not just the
Yep.
sales call. It's a sales call that where you're both talking about buying furniture for homeschooling, and you're like, oh yeah, that's crazy. I got mine at IKEA and whatnot, right? Like a
Yeah, yeah.
real thing that feels good.
Yep. Yep. How have you dealt with this? I know that's sort of we're riffing off this next phase of marketing in this personal experience era is what we're calling it. How have you done that? Because you've done so many implementations on the
Yeah.
marketing ops side. How do you build out those journeys? Because I think one of the key things that I'd love to hear your perspective on is like as you go through those journeys, how are you thinking about this in your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy question to think about after having this conversation, but you know, a lot of it just comes down to reminding ourselves that there's like a person at the other end of the number, and I think we always have to remind ourselves when you see like 30 or 280 leads or MQLs or SQLs or whatever the stat is, it's like when you, at least in a system like Pardot, one of these, you can click on it and it shows you all their names. Like back in the day where we had was Google Analytics, they don't want you to know who the person's name is. So even if you tried to hack it to drop some data in the cookie, they don't really want you to know they just want you to know 80 people went this direction, 40 of them converted, right? Like that's all we want you to know. And this is what they paid on Google AdWords, right? That's all they want to share with you. But at least with some of these tools, now you know specifically this person went through that path, and they took all these individual actions, and it's really neat to see their name and all of that. But you're right; it's very easy to get stuck and just see numbers and just build some god awful drip campaign that punishes people with terrible emails over and over again that they're just going to have to unsubscribe from. So a lot
Yeah.
of it, we really tried to train sales teams to use the information that we're capturing. So we're like cooking the hell out of people, and we can see that they lingered on the pricing page. We can see that they
Hmm.
registered but couldn't attend the webinar or this or that. And really try to train the sales team to, it's almost like the same way that you're talking about making moments with the 9 to 5 data, right? So we've been
Hmm.
already trying to train them. So you can see this information. We would always tell people, especially in sales, like, look, I know you can see that they're on the pricing page for 8 minutes. Don't call them and say, I see you're on the pricing page, and are you confused?
Hmm.
Or
Hmm.
you saw that they couldn't go to the webinar or something. Refer to that as, I was just thinking of you, wanted to check in.
Yep.
Unless they
Yep.
actually registered for something, in which case I saw you registered. Were you able to attend? Because I got some files for you. If not, so kind of
Yep.
use that to really show that you're paying attention. The left hand knows what the right hand's doing. But the moment that we create with those kind of apps would be like, I can see if you're live on my site right now and doing some research. And it's a great time for sales to reach out because it's not interrupting you. You're actually, this is the same task. Like, I'm just trying to help you do your research. Hey, is this a good time? Actually, yeah, I was just reviewing that document you sent me. Oh, great. Good timing. What a coincidence, right? Like, oh, what a moment. So like
Yep.
not as magical as a personal moment, talking about kids or hobbies, or for me, sci-fi or musicals or whatever, mountain climbing, but still a moment where you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. So we tried to do that. And then also on the email, really kind of make this distinction between a personal email and a corporate email. And I think, and you were starting to get into this, we could talk about this. I think a lot of people blur the two, and they send a personal corporate, like combine whatever you would ever combine those words, like corporate or personal. Like they send this thing, but people see the corporate part and they're like, peace, I'm out. They, like, to your point, they can sniff when they're in a drip campaign. Well, they can definitely sniff when they're in a mass email or mass LinkedIn. You're like, I'm out. I'm totally out. So
Yeah. Yeah.
really trying to change the way we send emails. If we want to make them long, Edwardian love letters, make it corporate, because we don't write long emails to each other. If you make it short, make it actually from you, like a composed new message, and you send. So really been trying to talk to people about sending messages that look like I just hit compose new message and send. And then there's some more advanced things of like, can I send stuff related to what you've been clicking on and what you've been thinking about, trying to create, I don't know if it's a moment, but at least a quality interaction,
Yep.
as personal as it can be.
Yep. Yeah. I love what you're saying there in terms of like, it is about getting to the person.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about again going to that three phase, it's like the touch impression place where it's like you said, it's like, okay, I've had 30,000 touches or 30,000 impressions, cool, but just really, what did you get on the other side of that? And more importantly,
Right.
it's what is the depth of what you got on the other side of that? Because you can also see, oh, I drove this many people to the site, but what was the downstream effect of that? And I'll tell you, the more you can get to the moment side of things, the deeper the relationship and deeper the actions and the downstream effect it has on those specific actions, because you're
Right.
building deeper human connections in terms of
Right.
that, or personal bonds in terms of that. What's interesting too is when you're talking about I can see who's on my site, and I can see what they've looked at, or they're lingering on the pricing page, or they are taking this specific action. That's intent, right? And that
Yes.
intent
Mm-hmm.
is really the key thing in terms of like being able to be relevant, because you can actually see that there's intent to buy, and that's your buying signal, right? And the buying signal needs to be matched with what is the actual needs of this person, right? And
Right.
this is where personas do help in this case, because you can actually start to actually boil it down to be like, well, what is this person thinking? We think what they're looking for, because it gives you a jumping off point to then ask more poignant questions, instead of being like, what's your day to day? Like, you need to know who that person is on the 9 to 5 as deeply as you will have to get to know them on the 5 to 9, and that's just the reality of it. And everybody has something they want to talk about, in the 5 to 9. But the reality is you're selling, and you're going to end up delivering, because you have to deliver value. It's business, business to business, and how you're actually interacting with that. So it is really critical, especially, in the marketing ops group, and teams that are listening in, here, that you are thinking about, how do I take that data and how do I take that information,
Yeah.
and then make sure the communication is super relevant to the stage of the buying cycle and the buying journey that that person is going through, and then trying to match that with, how does this person actually want to buy, that's
Yeah.
there. And that's a hard thing to do, and you've got to figure that out. And that's where you start thinking about, well, maybe this is a better place for us to inject sales or human interaction around what is otherwise a very automated approach that's happening.
From my recollection, persona tries to address how they would buy. And tell me if you agree or not with this. And then it almost sounds to me like, and then this actual personal 5 to 9 data is what um, it buys. Get not buys. You build the trust, like that trust and rapport where people buy from people they trust, right? And hey, there's a quote. I think it was I remember who it was, but like if people like you, they'll talk
Yep.
to you. But if they trust you, they'll buy from you.
Yep. Yep.
So is
Yep.
that addressing that? Do you see a place for personas for the how they like? I mean, how does what gift you want talk to you about how you want to buy, or is that done separately?
I think it's done separately, but you can figure that out by using, you think about it as like, what's your Trojan horse to be able to actually build a bond with somebody. And this is like
Right.
high
Right.
beginning stages of the relationship,
Totally.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're like in the beginning stages, who is this person as an individual, and let me just get to how they are, because you're going to find the Darth Vaders who like literally don't want to share anything. They just want to be sold to, and just show me the value, and if I think there's any value there, I'll listen to you further, right? There's just
Right.
those people. There's many other people, and
Darth
again,
Vader's.
remember, in B2B, there people buy, yeah, there's many Darth Vaders, but there's actually a lot less Darth Vaders than you think there are, because people care about specific things. You can always tap into something, but you also have to show it, and I was talking with a guy named John Barrows, who's a sales trainer,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he
He's
was
been
asking
on
a lot
here.
about this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right, right. So John is very much the like, show me the value, and then I'll tell you about my daughter who wrote, helped me write the book, and then you get into like the personal thing, and how much she loves like Boston sports, and et cetera, et cetera. That's there. So you just have to feel that out, and just be able to get better and better at how you determine what that person is all about, and how they want to buy, and what they care about. And there's those questions, and that's where you start asking more on the personal level. Who are they is one piece of it, but what are they, and what are they trying to do, and what's their process? And like, you can't fake authenticity or caring. Like, that is
Totally.
something that you could take me being like, oh, you love mountain climbing? Oh yeah, well, I love mountain climbing too, and then I hate mountain climbing. That's the reverse. But like, like,
I like
if you're
that
just going
too.
in there, yeah. I heard, it was funny. I heard I was on with another podcast, and we were talking about a story, and the sales guy had used He said it flat out on, it was like a big group. And the guy said, yeah, well, if I find out that the guy likes, went to the University of Florida, I'm just going to be like, I love the Florida Gators. I'm like, they're going to sniff through that in 2 seconds. Like that
Right.
is the most inauthentic
It's
way for
cheesy
you to be able
shit.
to like talk.
Yeah.
It's totally stupid and cheesy and whatnot. And that's the attention grabbing techniques that people are going to have to understand. You have to get away from that.
Yeah.
So again, when you're getting to the persona and how somebody wants to buy, those are different things, right? Because I can show you 3 different CMOs, and I'll tell you, if you have a brand-oriented CMO, if you have a tech data-oriented CMO, you have a like product marketing-oriented CMO, like wherever they're balancing, on their strengths, in those cases, those are very different people. You have a quantitatively driven analytical person who's going to
Hmm.
definitely want to buy differently than a probably very emotional brand-based, CMO who like is probably more about that emotion. So you have to like dig into a lot of that and learn it. And again, we're in the very early stages of this movement that's taking off right now.
Yeah.
It's like we all have to work on this together. We have to learn, and we just have to be authentic and genuine. And like I said, you just take the general approach of just take all the touches and impressions that you're throwing out there right now, take the corporate stuff and try and turn it into personal, and take a maturity curve and start picking those moments out, or those places out that you want to turn into moments, and then start effectively, scaling it using that approach. That is by far and away, it's changed the way that we market and sell, at Alyce, with everybody.
Right.
Like we want people to not only like us but trust us, and trust doesn't come unless you build rapport with somebody, and genuine authentic rapport with that person, and then show me value. And that's where marketing ops and that's where marketing air cover and stuff can come in to help really support that as well.
Yeah. So the attention grabbing, it goes back to the whole just trying, people trying to struggle to get likes to report on. It's like, no, it doesn't really do anything. That's not moving anyone forward. You
Yeah.
can't fake that. It's almost, I almost was thinking that early on when you were talking about this, is that, sometimes people will join me on a podcast, and in my invite, I'm not just like, I have received, I don't know if you've received like a mass email invite to a podcast, and it feels really weird because you're like, how many people are you going to interview? Like, I interview a lot
Seriously.
of people, but there is no, and we have process, but there is no mass email to invite you. So my message would be like, hey, come chat. And Holly, I talked to a couple weeks ago, loves sci-fi. And I was like, we gotta talk sci-fi. Or someone was like,
Mhm.
musical theater. I'm like, let's talk musical theater. And they're like,
Yeah.
yes. But
Yep.
I'm not full of shit. I do love those topics. And I would like to hear. Let's chat about it. Maybe
Yeah.
we talk 20%
Yeah.
marketing, and we talk
Yep.
80% sci-fi books. Like I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I don't know if anyone else is, but like and being genuine is so important these days. And so whether you're using information you get from marketing automation and it's telling you the 9 to 5, or all these other superpowers, more about them. Yeah, you just can't you can't fake that caring. You really do need to
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
And if
And I
you
think
don't,
I think you
forget
you
about
said
it.
this before too. Yeah, exactly. You said this before too, which is like, think about the person on the other end. And the problem right now, if you just take like the highest level concept here as to why this movement, this next era of marketing and sales are going to take shape,
Yeah.
is because people are going to want to understand, am I being marketed to the way I would want to actually be marketed to? Am I being sold to the way I want to be sold to? And in reality, that's going to all become one stream, right? You see that already happening, where
Mm,
sales is being moved further up the funnel, marketing is being moved further down the funnel, and there's this major overlap that's happening, and major change that's happening in the marketing and sales world.
yeah.
So how do you really think about that as one stream, instead of, and I think this is the whole, like, we've seen a lot of this stuff around. We've talked about this for a couple of years, like the MQL is dead, right? And I know that's a hot button topic that for another podcast or something, right? But like,
Several other
the
episodes.
template, yeah, right. So you have, most folks, and it's still good to define these things, but you just have to understand what are the cases there. And when there's a hard line between marketing and sales, it is very hard to scale this, right? And so you're
Hmm.
talking to a lot of these enterprises that we have, most of the companies that we deal with are like very large enterprise organizations. Um, and there's a challenge there, because you have to be getting buy-in from both teams to adopt this approach. But when they do, the quality and like, conversions and everything just skyrocket, because they're adopting it all at once. And it's very transitional. It's very much like small pieces by pieces as you're taking through that process, and everyone just has to be bought off on it. And again, it just comes back down to, for God's sakes, like, I have tons of stuff publicly available. You should be able to talk to me about Cal Ripken, or guitar, or books, or anything else that's I'm a super geek about. And fitness freak, you know what I mean? Like, those are all things that you should just be able to like, lean in on, and also understand like what I'm running, the type of company. The best thing is when somebody sends me a gift, and it's like I'm running a gifting company for all intents and purposes, right? And I'm just like, are you serious? Like, seriously, come on. Like, what are you sending me, and why am I getting like my
Oh, I was
third
gonna
Boston
say maybe it was a
University
good
jacket?
gift, but you're saying they're like cheesy as hell, and you're like,
Oh my God.
yeah.
Horrible, 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 horrible. Like,
Now, if they
bad.
sent you a
Because you also
gift,
don't know if I owned it.
if they sent you a gift with Alice, maybe.
So I will tell you, one of our customers, I'll leave it nameless, but one of the largest companies in the world, and they used Alice. They signed up for it. This is back when we actually had like a free plan. This is about a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago. We sort of killed that since then, because we've gone upstream to much
Yeah,
larger
yeah.
enterprises. But when we were doing like the self-serve model, we actually had a like AE use Alice and send me a gift and a handwritten note, and everything was all included
Hell
inside of that.
yeah.
And I was like, oh, dude, like, you get the business no matter, like, you win the roost. And I've had that happen a few more times, since then, as well. But like, again, it's know who I am and know what my buying are. Also know my environment, because
Right,
that plays into how you'd want to think about this as well, right? Like, oh,
right,
if you're selling to like Envision or GitLab, that's totally remote. It's probably a totally different approach on how they're thinking about things in their process versus like, a very, and again, this is COVID, but like typically a very office oriented, culture where it's like everybody's in there and that's it. Or healthcare, good example,
right.
where everybody's in, can't do their job unless they're in place. So it's super interesting.
Yeah. And I like that it's a balanced approach because, yeah, there's that quote like, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. Like, oh, let me fix this loose screw with my hammer. When we're not saying that the 9 to 5 data isn't important. That's great. You got to
Yep.
get that, but that maybe won't get you the call, or maybe won't get you the connection, to be able to make. I mean, first, not even moment, but to make even that interaction happen, you may need something that just shows that you're investing in just a like 5 seconds worth of time more than everyone who's at zero, flatline zero. It would be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Crystal? Another gal
Oh yeah.
app.
Yeah. Yeah. So yep.
Crystal
Yep. So
knows.
Drew's a friend of mine. He's the CEO,
Oh, cool.
and it's super interesting because we've they do the personality side of things, right? They use
Yeah.
the DISC assessment, for it, and it's very interesting because they have a lot of like okay, how do you send an email? What's the personality type, for this individual,
Right.
that's there, and that to me is part of that 5 to 9, right? I mean, that's
Right.
part of the like, who is this person, outside of this, and how do you want to sell against them?
You guys need to
And I think
merge
there's a
like
lot of
PayPal and X did. You could be the next Elon
right,
Musk.
right. They're interesting because it's like, how do you build the personality and that into the process there? And I think
Right.
they give good suggestions on like emails and like how you think about that and what the approach is that's there too. Um, and I think that's a good stepping stone for how you communicate with somebody,
Right.
how you communicate in different stages, of the buying journey that's there as well. But yeah, Drew's an awesome. He's a friend of mine. I've known him for years and years and years and years. Since he started Crystal, and even his
What's his
previous
favorite
business,
thing? What should
before
I
that too.
message him about?
What's his favorite thing? He is like the ultimate tinkerer. Like,
Okay.
he is. I mean, I'll just make an intro if you want, but
No,
like,
I know. I bet. Just curious. Yeah.
he always has like side projects and side things going on. Like, you want to talk
Huh.
about somebody who's just got like geeky ideas and things all the time. We literally
He's
were
like
just talking about
building
that type
stuff
of
too,
stuff.
like with his hand, like
No, 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 not
no.
not in terms of like, physical. He's a
Oh,
coder, right? So it's
oh,
like,
coder. Got it.
like yeah, like,
Little projects here and there. He's
yeah,
coding.
he's got a project going on right now where he's basically trying to figure out how to take all the basically all the things we're talking about, all the
Yeah.
solicitations, and how to take those solicitations and basically like combine them. So if I'm like, oh yeah, Casey from this company, contacted me, like, I can remember and go back. Oh, there was a sales rep that I should have known that had that thing. He's always got these ideas, in terms of
Yeah.
how that's rolling. But he's the ultimate tinker and whatnot. I'm a business geek too, so I love riffing off business models, things with him too.
Oh, totally. I see
Yeah,
some mad wizard somewhere is thinking, how can I automate Alice and Crystal and find out people's nine to
yeah,
five, change
yep,
my nurture campaign based on that, drop in a
yep,
nice little gift. I
yep.
know we have only so much time. I feel like I could probably schedule 9 more of these conversations. These are great. Can you talk to me
Yeah,
about gifting? Because obviously you're the gifting god. and that's what your company does. And have you seen any? Is there a right way? Is there a wrong way? Um,
Yeah.
is there a wrong place to put it? Is there a right place? And then are there any sort of things you've learned just from gifting people things that maybe it works terrible or it works fantastic? Any kind of hacks and tips?
I mean, we can go on for hours on this one. So
Yeah, let's
let me
do
try
it.
and hit upon
Cancel your
like
other call,
the
man.
top. Yes, cancel. Yeah. So there's a number of things. Let's start off with like the timing,
Okay.
of gifting that's in there. As you mentioned before, and as we've talked about before, you don't want to just be gifting to just like, pen it, pummel somebody. Like if you're just spamming somebody, with gifts and things like that, it comes across disingenuous. So the fundamental thing when you're thinking about timing is, again, going back to those moments and figuring out like that needs a human interaction, a human portion of that to be a part of that. And if it's not, like if you're automating it through marketing automation, which we do have, as part of Alyce, you do it in terms of like, thanking or appreciation, or trying to drive action for like bulk things that are happening. So for example, if you're doing it one-to-one, you want it to be from a rep. Like it just should be from a rep as much as possible, because the rep can customize the message, can build some sort of a relatability around that, and it shows that that person put the time and effort behind it. If it's just a generic message that's attached to that, then it's kind of like cool, you know what I mean? But you read right through it and you're like, oh, I must be part of a campaign that's there,
Yeah.
right? So you can still create templates and make it feel very personal, but you
Mm-hmm.
still have taken, the 30 seconds to customize the message and do the things that you need to do to be able to say, oh, I wanted to send you this because I've always used this for blah, 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 whatever it might be.
Got it. Sorry, real quick. I felt like your
Okay.
email to me was a great example of that, because you had said, like, hey, I'm looking forward to chatting on the podcast. This is going to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was like a part where it's like, if this gift doesn't suit you, feel free to donate or exchange it. And I figured like that was probably something that needs to be in every message. But for sure, the first part was
Yep.
like super excited for the podcast. So to your
Yeah.
point, the one-to-one had some element of like, no, this isn't, I got dropped into Greg's app now and now I'm in it. It was like you sent
Yep.
that to me type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think you can get even more than that, right? Because I was going to
Yeah,
write something about your kids in there,
sure.
just because I
Oh,
sent you
right.
a digital family portrait, right? So that's one thing I probably would have done if I wasn't in like, speeding up and we're
Right.
having the
Oh,
podcast
yeah.
and going from there, right?
Yeah.
So like but that's an important thing. So that's the one-to-one. On the gifting side, from timing, when you're dealing with like the marketing ops team and like trying to automate this side
Hmm.
of things, you have to be thinking about it in terms of where are those moments that it makes sense for me to do it in bulk. For example, if you're trying to drive people to a webinar, you can make it where it feels like it's personal, and you're doing this. And again, typically we like to have that coming, and we have functionality in Alyce specifically, like where you can send it from the sales rep to those people. So like
Hmm.
imagine you're matching up, the accounts, with the reps and like the folks they want to be invited from and whatever it is, or it's the person who's putting on the webinar,
It's
that's
important.
there, or the
Yeah.
event. That's super important. Same thing on the flip side, if you're trying to thank like all your speakers or all the people that attended the webinar or the coffee chat or whatever it is, you can send it from one person and automate that. And like the message doesn't have to be overly personal there, but you're just saying, hey, thanks so much for attending blank. There's your relevancy, right? This event that we just had that was here. Hope you got a ton out of this, here, and I hope, hope this really makes you have a brighter day, right? And you can still, it still feels personal to that person. You can
Yeah.
automate that as you go through. But again, if you notice, everything is one-to-one. It's not like blank company is just blasting these things out, being like, hey, take a meeting and I'll send you a drone, or,
Do you have
I'm going to
customers
send you
doing that
my.
though? Do you have anyone like disobeying the law here and just
No, I mean,
blanket?
The Alyce model doesn't allow it, right? Because
Okay.
everything is, we do not have the opportunity to send the actual thing, because I'm very much against it. Like, I feel wholeheartedly that you can surprise and delight somebody, and you actually get more from them by inviting them into an experience where now they are investing their time, and they're investing their like emotional and psychological essence into the marketplace and the experience you just started going through,
Yeah.
because it gives you the power of choice to decide, do I want to opt in or opt out? If you just send me something and something shows up, you're basically forcing something on me. And it actually, and this goes back to the myth we talked about, it's actually doing more harm than good. Even if you get 20% response rate on like something, probably piss off 80% of the people, right? And so you're
What, like,
hurting yourself.
why, by just sending a water bottle, I'm pissing
Yeah,
80%?
just sending it off. Like,
Um,
great. Now, what am I going to do with another water bottle? What
it's
the heck am I going
true.
to do here?
I
Or
got
you
enough
send me
water
a
bottle.
box
Yeah.
of crap, right? You know, of
Right.
stuff where I'm just like, what am I going to do with this stuff? And it's super wasteful, and that's it. It's like you're going to be really annoying more people than good. There's no campaigns, or virtually no campaigns, unless you're deep in a relationship with somebody that's
Right.
going to have more people that you've actually, made a positive impact on than a negative impact. And there's this misnomer that's going to go into this whole era that we're going to be moving into, where it's going to move away from like everything having to be branded, and it's much more that the people in your organization are your brand, and those personal experiences that the folks are building between you, that person, and somebody else is really what's going to help to actually push the brand forward. And by don't get me wrong, brand is insanely important because that sets the tone for who the company is, and
And for the
the
people.
values of the business
Yeah.
and the people. Like, I don't want this to come across the wrong way there, but balancing more on the people representing the brand is super important, because you can have the most fun brand in the world. Or you take like Gong, for example, who I think does a really good job branding,
Yeah. I talked to
and I think they
Uzi.
have like,
Yeah.
right,
It's
Udi's,
sick.
Udi's amazing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And super smart with how you do that. But if all of a sudden the sales rep gets on there and gets very transactional and like isn't in the same mindset or whatever it is, it's actually conflicting the brand and creating a negative reaction,
Yeah.
negative experience with them versus a positive one as well. So that is, all these things are going to be converging more and more and more, and you're going to start
Yeah.
to recognize that marketing's role is twofold. One is you have to build awareness and you have to show value, and you have to do that. But it's going to be value on a one-to-one basis, because it's going to move more and more towards how is marketing like supporting the brand, but the brand is actually being using to prop people up inside the organization. And you see that
Yeah.
happening with like the progressive companies using social to be able to do that. You've got a lot of these more progressive companies that are pushing on, elevating their own individual people, to the forefront of this. And that's, we're in the early stages of that. And the second role of marketing, again, this is the conversions of marketing and sales and CS and AM and all the other stuff that's happening there, is marketing's role is to help push on those one-to-one relationships. The more marketing can do to help drive those one-to-one relationships, the more power and the more unification around these personal experiences you're going to be able to actually drive inside the business, which helps dig roots inside the organization, which then helps get you rapport and trust. And now you've got these buying committees that are like really connected to you more than another vendor. And the
Yeah.
deeper you are with those people and those personal bonds with those people, like they will trust you more than somebody else, and they'll actually say, this company's going to take care of me, even if you're feature deficient on certain cases, right?
Sure. Because you
So
trust them.
there's you trust them. It's also going to get you through like the really tough times, where every single company, we have our screw ups. Every company has their screw ups. The
Totally.
companies stick with us because we built personal experiences with these folks, and we've built bonds, and we've talked to them. We know who they are. We know their kids' names. We know like all these things that we've trained our team to really build, personal bonds on. And that goes so far, and again, if a product is super crappy and like that's it, of course you can't solve everything there, but a
Right.
company will put up with a lot more if you've built that personal bond with somebody than not.
Right. If it's a transactional, they'll ditch you the first sign of trouble. It's like,
Yep.
nothing's invested here. It totally hit me when you said that, brand has its place. In my mind, the brand like empowers the team employees themselves. But you're right. The customers, when they write glowing reviews, are typically like, they're not like, oh, that Cheshire Impact fist just is in
Mm-hmm.
my dreams all night. They're like, no, it's the Peters and the Leannes and the, all the people on the team, the Jennifers. They're so amazing. They take care of me. I trust them. We'll keep working with you forever. It's because of those people. And they're not thinking about the brand per se. They're thinking about the team, but the team was sort of, to your point, uplifted by that brand and empowered to be someone that someone could trust. I like that comparison.
Yeah. The brand, you have to think about the brand as the playbook and the guardrails for how a company conducts itself. It's the
Yeah.
tone of voice, it's the personality, and then
Yep.
everyone has to exude and embody those brands. And the brands that do that really, really well, right? And
Yep.
the values that they stand for. And that has to come through how you sell, how you market. And
Yep.
the companies that connect those things together are really important. It's not your logo, and that's the biggest misnomer. Let's go to myth number whatever, get Thor's hammer out again. But like,
37. You still have the hammer.
37,
Yeah.
yeah, so the hammer, it's like the brand is so misconstrued in B2B right now in terms of what it is. And the companies that get it, that it's like the brand are the people, and the brand are the guardrails and the playbook as to how the people interact and communicate that brand and the values and everything else, forward. And those come across in every bit of communication that you have with any single, organization that's there. Like from a marketing ops perspective, from our own internal perspective, I'm looking at every piece of communication and every one of those points. And it's like, what are we doing to exude, the Alyce values? And how do we show those, right? And ours is first, give consistently. But that's like, how is that being taken through every single thing that we do? It's never about us. It's always about the other person. Every single
Right.
time that we talk to somebody, how are we delivering value every single time? How do we connect with somebody else every single time that's there? I think that's just such a big misnomer. And that's another thing that goes back to like the direct mail, like I'm going to send my water bottle or my branded box or whatever it is. It's like, oh, you made a brand impression. But you know what? The person could have actually done a better job of connecting and saying, well, I'm representing this brand that's there, right?
Yeah.
That's the key. That's the real important point.
Yeah, I've seen that. Hey, you can send these chocolates or these caramels or a Starbucks gift card, but it's the note, who it's from. If it's from some anonymous entity, you don't really have a love for, unless it's SpaceX and it used to be Apple. But otherwise, it's the person you have a relationship with that you appreciate. That SDR rep that called me, I like her, and I took the meeting because of her. I don't like her company yet. They shouldn't
Yep.
get confused.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
that first part was good, but like, let's go to your point. Show me the value. So
Yep.
powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yep.
my question for you: Who are you? Who are you? What what is your 5 to 9? Can you take me back in time to like the days of like little Greg growing up? Like, where'd you grow up?
Yeah.
Who are you? What was it like?
So grew up in Connecticut.
Okay,
I was, I have two brothers. I have one older brother, one younger brother. Um, I was always like, I was just always a geek, always like
sure.
a really, my biggest things when I was younger were, art was a huge thing for me. Baseball was a monster thing. I played baseball through my whole career,
Oh no,
all the
no
way up
kidding.
through
Okay,
through into college, and guitar. And those were like my big three hobbies. And part of baseball also is like baseball cards, and we can go the Gary Vaynerchuk like baseball card route if you want to geek out about that.
that's cool.
And I always like, I don't know, just I always was like, I never knew it was business, but even when I was dealing with like business cards back in middle school, I was already trading up, trading down, always like at the time you had this Beckett book, was the like
Oh yeah,
baseball
yeah,
card value,
sure.
thing. And I would always be like trying to time and decide who do I trade for and what are the right things. And I always create themes and stuff. But then I ended up running almost like a baseball card, like, business behind there because I was buying and selling
Nice.
baseball cards. So I'd go to the baseball card shows, I'd buy them, sell them to all the middle school kids and whatnot, and that was a way I made a bunch of money in the early days for that. And so I was just always trying to enterprise, always thinking about different ways of doing that, and that sort of carried into through high school and then into college. And I guess going to the 5 to 9 or the personal side of things, my parents claimed bankruptcy my freshman year going into college. So
Really?
it was and it
Shit.
was Boston University, which at the time, this was what, 97 or so.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so at the time, maybe it was $46,000 a year. Now it's like 67 or $80,000,
God
seventy
damn.
thousand dollars or eighty thousand
Probably
dollars or
still
whatever.
is, even if it's virtual.
Yeah, I know. Well,
Another
we'll go off on
story.
that topic. I have a whole another, I have actually a LinkedIn post queued up just specifically on like even my thoughts on education. But um, the they claimed bankruptcy. So what happened was that it looked like my parents made a lot of money, and then I had no financial aid going into freshman year, and I was like, there's no way I'm living at
Ah,
home. Like,
no.
frig this, not doing it. So I ended up working. My college life was working 3 jobs throughout college. So I was a security guard, for one of the art galleries, which is
Wow.
cool because I was getting paid and I can also do my homework, my as a
And all the
graphic design
girls that
or
would
art
come
major.
by to check out the art, if you're like,
I mean, that was it,
you're
right?
safe. You're safe now.
In the fine arts group or program at BU, it was 9 women to 1 man.
Wow.
For every 1 man. So that was the ratio. I actually ended up marrying my my wife actually was in all my classes at BU. So that's
No
that's
kidding. You
another whole
guys
nother
met
little
there.
side of things. Yeah, we met there when we were 17. We didn't actually date while we were in college. It was 8 years later after we graduated college that we were all like, "You're kind of cool. You're kind of cool too." And then
Wow.
went from there. Um, and then so I was working. I was the security guard, so I was able to dual purpose my homework and stuff there. I was able to. I was actually a data entry analyst for the MFA, at the time
Okay.
for a couple of years in there. I could that's a whole nother story for another time.
Right.
And then the big moment for me was my freshman year, which is where this company at the time called Back Channel Media, it's defunct now, but hired me to build out their website, and this is like
Wow.
'97, right?
Okay.
So I was not, I started to pick up computer science, then I took a first computer science class, and then I just became this super enthralled by programming and engineering,
Yeah.
and drove through that. So that was where I learned Flash, Flash 1.0 and
Yeah,
Director
man.
and like the super early days, of the web, and built a bunch of websites, helped him with all his stuff, did all his marketing for him, and he was paying me $15 an hour to start, throughout that, and I was able to pay for BU my first 2 years with my own cash, and that was
Dude,
that
that's
was
hard, man. You worked hard.
was it was but looking back, it was like, yes, I didn't get a chance to party and do all the fun things that most folks be able to do, but it was like the beginning stage of my first company, which is what I launched at 19, and then that turned into my agency I ran for about 12 years, and then grew that to be one of the largest e-commerce agencies, and sold that off in the end of 2012.
Yeah.
And then that led me to fiddling around with a few different startup ideas, and trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. Ended up having my daughter, and saying, oh well, I'm going to have my daughter, I might as well start a company, like really go gung-ho on a startup, which is Alyce.
Yep.
So I had my daughter, it's about 4.5 years ago, a little less than 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, and started Alyce. And so those are my two I'd say my two daughters, right? So Zoe
Right.
and Alice, so A and Z,
Yeah.
that's there. So yeah, it's been wild. And the Alyce story, just to be honest, was one where I ran the agency, and walking away from the agency, it was hard, because I didn't really feel like the impact on employees was really awesome, because I saw how far they have made it, and like I keep in touch with so many of them, from
Mm-hmm.
that time, and we were about 500 people by the time I left,
Jeez, man.
and it was really cool to see that whole entire process go. Um, and that was a bootstrap company, by the way, so that was was a different experience than this.
Hell
But I
yeah.
wanted to create a company that had just like impact on the world. And when I looked at how much money was being spent on gifts and rewards and swag and, direct mail and, events and all this
Yeah.
other stuff, it's so much wasted money. And how much tens of thousands of dollars of stuff over the years that I ran my agency, of stuff that people treated me to and gave me, and all the stuff that I remembered, like it wasn't there. It was nothing there. And I said, well, if I could solve and build a business model that's built on helping other people, and the core of the business model is giving back, which is why you see, like, I think we're somewhere on the order of about 15% of people donate now, their
Mm-hmm.
gift value to a charity of their choice. Like, we're donating a huge amount of money back to charity already, in just the size that we are now, and we've 6x'd over the last year. Um,
Quick question.
and yeah,
Um,
please.
I saw there's a link on there that says not interested. What's the percent of people that click that?
Actually, it's pretty low. It's
Darth
probably sub
Vader's
1%.
1%.
Yeah, it's the Darth Vader's, but and maybe it's higher than that. But what's awesome about that is that gives the sales rep information on, hey, I'm not ready to buy now, but thanks for thinking about me. Which is interesting. The other thing
Sure.
that's interesting too, as a side note on the gifting side too, is we have a lot of people that don't accept the gift, but still take a meeting or connect with the person, just because either of policies or other things. And that's
Got
the
it.
beauty of the Alyce model, is you're not actually exchanging anything monetary value. So you're not dealing with compliance issues or anything else that's there.
Right.
So that was another big piece of the model. Back to the,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
model itself. The whole thought process was, if we could just get this spend to be going through Alyce, by default you're going to be giving back such a huge portion, and secondarily, by giving the power for the other person to exchange for anything they want on the Alyce marketplace, or donate to a charity of their choice, you're saving billions and billions and billions of dollars of wasted stuff that's happening right now. All that
True.
crap that's at conferences, all the stuff that you're sending to each other. I mean, it's such a huge waste. So that's the driving factors. The bigger and more successful Alyce gets, the more
Yeah.
we're able to really embark on this big social mission, which is really the underlying value, which is give first, give consistently, and drive the whole business around that. And I want to see that play into, how do you also build authentic bonds and personal bonds with people. And that was the whole thing came together nicely, in the early days, when I was really thinking about, like, how do we create a company of major impact in the world.
Yeah, I could see. And did that happen after? I mean, you've done the company to, like, I don't want to say that for One Peak or any other ones didn't have like core values, but like you did the business. So now you're kind of like looking for, like, I've already done that, so what can I do now that has more of that sort of global impact on
Yeah.
what's around me?
Yeah, I think, you should, you know this too, and we've talked about this before, is, once you have kids, you
Mm,
recognize that the world is not about you anymore. The world revolves around your ability to make the world better for them, right? And you want
sure.
everything in your power as a parent to make them, more successful and give them every opportunity that they have. And especially having a daughter, and this is something I'm like super passionate about, is how do you empower women, especially in the tech world right now, in the VC
Sure.
world, something else I advise, I think it's up to 8 women-founded startups, in Boston right now,
Wow.
and around. It's not just Boston. And I'm trying my damnedest to say I want my daughter to have every opportunity to have equality of, and equity, of like her opportunities, that are there as well. So I have a very big passion, for that as well.
How old did you say she was?
My daughter's 4.
4, okay.
Yeah,
So mine's 9, and I'm with you, like, there's something like sons, there's a thing, like, I get to wrestle or whatever, but, like, I have a special place in my heart with my daughter, and to be clear, children, if you're listening to this later, I love you both
yeah,
equally, but in
yeah,
in different, in fun ways, they're unique. But like,
yeah,
you're right, daughters, and especially when you read about different things with women and tech industry, and who was it, Uber, that had some like like the developers that were just like, wow,
yeah,
this place is gross,
yep,
go Lyft, go
yep,
go anybody that's having trouble with COVID. But yeah, like, man, you just want them to succeed. And but tell you what though, your example, it is more than a lot of things out there, like her just seeing you create, because I know my daughter's like seeing me do weird things, but I'm encouraging her, and instead of being like, I'm gonna, you know work here, work there, it's like, I'm gonna create I'm like, what company would you create? She's like, it's gonna sell toys in the mall. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
cool. Like
yeah, yeah,
encouraging that,
yep,
as opposed to being like,
yep,
no, you got to go to school, or do some subject that's stable. Like, no, do whatever, like, go find your passion, like I've been finding mine.
yep. Yeah, I mean, it's amazingly well said, right? Yeah, Our
Yeah.
our job is, we want all those opportunities to be there, and it doesn't mean follow in our footsteps, right?
Right.
Actually, it should be find your own way,
Yeah.
but you know, show, and like, it's our job as men, right? Especially, the age and the place we are right now, and like really not seeing these, like, like the movement and the the polarization has actually brought out like positivity and awareness of the situation. Is more about the
Sure.
action we all need to take, but it means that it's individually on us to drive that through to
Oh,
make an
totally.
impact on the world. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And for our daughters, both of us, like, it is critically that we're setting the example and we're doing everything in our power, because it's like, it's the same thing with, like, Black Lives Matter, or like, with black folks, right? It's important that us as white privileged males are the ones speaking out and taking the actions to be able to open up those opportunities. Otherwise, like, there's nothing, like, it doesn't matter. I don't care what side of the fence you're on. Like,
Sure.
people and humans are humans. It's like,
Yeah.
market to me and sell to me the same way. Treat me like you'd want to be treated yourself, and that is just the way that the world really needs to be thinking about it as we move forward. And for our daughters, same damn thing. Like, it
Yeah.
is critical that we are constantly thinking about how we, you know uh, change the dynamic, and we move the needle, forward, for that as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
passion of
Well
mine.
said, man. Absolutely. I think what helps here too, um, is, like, I'd argue, like, your children are people you love more than yourself. Like, so you would do anything for them. And so if there's an issue that one of them might be facing, you want to champion and do whatever you need to do, with your own attitude and other people, to make sure that they at least have the confidence to call out the bullshit and still go for
Yeah,
whatever they want to go for.
yeah, yep, 100%. Couldn't agree
Yeah.
more. What's the most fun thing you do with your daughter? What do you have as like your special time?
Um, lately it's been playing Uno. Have you have you
Really?
have you remember that game? Have you played that lately?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My daughter hasn't really grasped the concept. She has Frozen 2 Uno, so we we
They're
we do a
branded
cheater
now.
version.
Yep.
You know,
We've got
yeah, they're
Barbie
branded now.
Uno,
Yeah,
we've got Mario Uno, and sometimes they have special cards that do little
yeah,
special things. But you know what?
yep,
Like, the kids have both gotten to the point where they're old enough now, and the three of us will just sit down and we'll just do that. Before COVID, it would be going on like little date nights.
hmm,
Best thing ever. We get to a
yeah,
restaurant, I'm like, I need your best table, please. This is a
yep,
date.
yep.
And they're all like, oh, and you're like, yeah, but it
Oh,
is. And then we just,
yeah,
sit across from each other at a booth and just have a great time. Meanwhile,
yep,
mom's back with, son. They're having their own. He's taking her on a date, or just,
yep,
having
yep.
quality time. So I love having those conversations. She's very, analytical, but also like she's very instinctual. So she's like me 4.0. So it's really fun to
Yeah,
talk to
yeah.
her. And then I don't know if you've had this happen yet, but like when they say weird things, you're like,
Mhm,
yeah, actually, that's a great point.
mhm,
Or little observations. Or one time I jokingly like knocked on the table because it was a wooden table, like knock on wood,
mhm.
and she was like, "What is that? Tell me about that." I'm like, "What are you
Yeah,
doing?" I'm like, "Oh, let me tell you about this." So it's been.
yeah.
How about yourself?
So I do Daddy Daughter Day every single Saturday or
Nice,
Sunday. That's our
nice.
that's our like our special day together. And if like we have plans on Saturday, we'll make it Sunday and stuff. Lately, we've been doing we have this like little ritual. So we have these, and again, COVID sort of like restricts it. But
Totally.
the one that we've been doing the last few weekends, other than I was on vacation the last 2 weeks, but like we go down the Esplanade in Boston, and she rides a full pedal bike now, and we just ride for about 3 to 4 miles on
Wow.
the Esplanade. And I started at BU. I always tell her the stories about college, and then we drive, and we're both like we call ourselves Ninja Warriors. I'm like obsessed with American Ninja Warrior,
Yes. Have you ever done
to the
it?
point
Would
where I
you?
was telling you. I would love to do it. I think I would have to work on hand strength, there.
You
But
look like you could do
as I,
it.
you know, I so here's a little funny 5 to 9 story. So they just put in an American Ninja Warrior, like a lot of the obstacles about 5 minutes away from my house, outdoor playground
Wow.
that's there. And so I went to it, and the first day it opens with my daughter, and there's like the kids version, and then there's the adult version, and we call each other ninjas, and we always do daddy daughter ninja day, or
Nice.
daddy daughter ninja time. So we'll go there or any other playgrounds, and we come up with some like ninja names. So like one is called Ninja Chip because it's like got all wood chips on the bottom. One's called Ninja Spin because it's got this crazy spinner thing, which is the one on the
Jeez.
Esplanade and stuff. And I went to the I don't know, whoever watches American Ninja Warrior here will understand this, but there's the wall, and then there's the 1 to 2 inch ledge, and then you go from one ledge to the next, to the next, to the next.
Okay.
And so I did it, I went through the medium level course on like a Friday night that it was there. And then I went back Saturday morning with Zoe to start Daddy Daughter Day. And I was like, I'm just gonna do the hard one, like the really hard level. And I
Nice.
went up there and I put my first 2 hands up there, and all of a sudden I heard pop, pop. And I pulled and tore
Uh-oh.
both tendons in my ring finger, which is, super tasty.
Ah.
So I've been
Just
out,
from hanging off? From hanging off. It was like, was
it's
it
it's
the wall
the
run?
if you're, in rock climbing or any climbing, there's like closed crimp and open crimp, and I was kind of like stuck in the middle, and it kind of, missed there.
Oh.
And so right here, on both of them, I pulled I think it's called the A4 pulley, inside of here. And so the A4 pulleys in both of these hands got torn. I didn't like, that's a self-diagnosis, by the way, but like it's getting better, and I can like finally do this, but it still hurts a decent amount.
So it's not like a
So
completely torn. They got something, you damaged them.
yeah, if it was
Yeah.
completely torn, like you get into these, never WebMD yourself. Like that's the other thing
I
I've been
know,
trying not
right?
to not to do it. But yeah, so yeah, but it was definitely, I could tell because all the symptoms were the same, and I watched a bunch of rock climbers that have talked about their finger injuries and how they rehabbed it. And so I'm just following a couple of those protocols
Let's be honest,
myself right
YouTube
now.
is more helpful for medical things than than WebMD.
Yeah, you're actually right. And but it's also scarier in some
It
cases too,
is.
because you're like, should I trust this guy that has like 300 views,
Hey
but
man,
seems
it's
like
all
a
good.
doctor,
This is what I did.
yeah, a couple of them are anyway.
Man,
So that's our daddy daughter time.
that's
Like we
cool.
we love it. We always go out. It's like a full time from like usually 8 or 9 in the morning till 1 o'clock. And then in the old days we used to do like sushi and ice cream in the afternoon and all that type of stuff. But those
Sushi and
are
ice
other
cream.
things.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, not at the same time, but yes, usually one
Well,
one
when all
following
this
another.
COVID stuff is done, we got to do a double daughter date sometime.
I
That'll be
love it.
cool.
I'm absolutely game.
That'd
Yeah,
be
anytime
cool.
you want. Yep.
Yeah, sweet, man. Well, hey, where can people connect with you? Throw out some links, social platforms, some Alyce
Yep.
URLs, just all the stuff at us.
Yeah, so Alyce.com is the company. So it's ALYCE.com. You can reach me at Greg@Alyce.com, GREG at Alyce.com.
Now you're gonna get like 100
And you
more
can find me on
offers.
LinkedIn. That's
Yep.
fine. Let's see. I'll just keep filling up I'll get my own Thor's hammer on that one.
Right. Personalizing
And
people. Come on.
yeah, come on, be personal. And then LinkedIn is the best place for me,
Okay.
to reach me. Like I check Twitter, and I'll be on Twitter every once in a while, but like LinkedIn's my place. So
Got it.
find me on there, Greg Segall,
What?
Segall, and go
Okay.
from there.
What's the best place? The best way to check out Alyce? Do you sign up for something? Do you get a? Is there some videos?
Now just check it out on the website is the easiest place to find the information. It's on there as well.
Got it.
And can also write to me. I'm happy to connect folks internally there. We don't have the self-serve version anymore, so um, it's all enterprise right now.
Got it. So so really people should be checking this out. Well, everyone should check it out, but the ones that should be signing up are like enterprise level.
Yeah, right now we're very focused on enterprise level organizations. So
Cool.
typically ones that have, at least, 50 sales reps or more, is kind of like
Okay.
the sweet spot for it. I mean, we work with companies that are smaller than that, so that's not like a hard and fast rule, but we're
Sure.
very much looking for companies that understand and really drive, basically take the podcast and just say, if you believe in this approach and you can actually get buy off inside the organization, Alyce is an amazing tool, an amazing platform for you to be able to instantiate, because it fundamentally changes the approach on how you're actually, personally connecting with people.
Yeah. And then you got to train them to use it and got to get them to imagine that's
Yeah, the
a whole
training
nother
actually is not
conversation.
the training is actually not that hard at all,
No,
right? I mean, it's a very simple interface.
not the
Just it's
how, but
more.
like when and why and building it into the process. And
Yeah. I think it's
yeah,
interesting because the sales reps, we do a lot of that. We have very a ton of best practices, and we have like
nice.
really regimented training, and it's also very much on an individual company basis. Like what are the main points that you need to? But there's like key use cases that are the highest value ones, which are where we see that with 95% of our customers, and
Got
we
it.
can pick those out and help drive those better.
Sick, man. This has been awesome, dude. Thanks
Yeah,
for coming on here.
Casey, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I love the conversation, and I'm looking forward to the post-COVID daddy-daughter days.
For
Double date,
sure. For sure. Well,
triple,
we
quadruple D,
yeah, trip, quadruple, 4D. There
right?
you go.
Daddy-daughter double date. Yes,
That's
yeah.
it. Yeah.
There you go.
Boom. We're gonna start a trend, man. That's the next
4D,
app
man.
right there.
That's the next thing.
Yeah, we could talk about a million things. So maybe we'll have you come back in like the winter time or something and just
Sure, be happy to.
chat some more because we could talk BU. We got some other things that we'll put them on
Uh-huh.
the list. But this has been
Yeah.
great. Thanks for coming down here. I learned a ton. And for the people listening, if you learned a ton, and I freaking know you did because I ran out of paper. I have 2 pages of notes over here. No paper left. There's none. There's no spots. There's no white
Yeah.
mites. It's crazy. I have to digest this episode, like a lot of us probably listening, for the next several days to be able to take action. But this is awesome. So thanks again, Greg,
Thanks a lot.
for this. And we'll catch you all next time. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you.